And now, before we dive into our next session on food and water security, I would like to directly call our moderator, Mr. Hassan Mufid Malawi, GM Elite Agro. Welcome, sir. Be seated. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can. Mr. Antoine Quayle, Commercial Director for MEA Valmont Middle East. Welcome, sir. Srihana Kurdi, CEO of Sky Drugs Sustainable Water Technologies.
She's on
The
her
lady
way.
is on her way.
Yep.
We are expecting her soon to come. Mr. Peter Henderson, founder of E2G Food. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hassan Mufid, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Should I leave a room for the runner?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. The recent global events have underscored the critical importance of food security for our nation's well-being. The convergence of factors such as population growth, the aftermath of the pandemic, climate change, and geopolitical tensions have pushed food security to the forefront of the government priorities globally. It is concerning to note that the Global Food Security Index has declined since its peak in 2019. Skyrocketing food prices and unprecedented hunger eruption reflect significant risks within the global food system caused by climate change affecting the agricultural production, scarcity of natural resources, and geopolitical conflicts that disrupt trade and weaponize food. The economic and socio-political shocks of recent years have worsened an already fragile food environment, with food security becoming a fundamental element of national security, as proven by several instances of civil unrest in countries that lack it. In the Arab world, over 50% of food is imported due to limited arable land, water shortages, and governance issues. At the macro level, however, these resources are available along with fertilizers, manpower, and financial resources within that sphere, though not properly distributed. This reality highlights the urgent need for strategic planning to optimize their use through effective government-to-government policies and bilateral agreements. Efforts undergone so far have been ineffective or not meeting the required expectations. The UAE stands out in the Middle East and North Africa with its proactive approach to food security. Its national food security strategy aims for a top position in GFSIA by 2051. The UAE strategy integrates local production boost, advanced logistics, strategic national reserves, and technology adoption. This holistic approach has improved food safety, diversified import sources, and significantly reduced the food waste. Food waste is another critical issue, with 1/3 of all food produced globally lost or wasted annually, equivalent to about $1 trillion wasted. This waste does not only represent the financial loss, but also a substantial environmental impact. Addressing food waste is crucial for reducing both the environmental strain and the economic losses in our global food supply. To put this into perspective, the 1.3 billion metric tons of food that we lose is equivalent to an average loss of 130 billion metric tons of water and the associated agri-inputs and power that goes into producing them. Additionally, the carbon footprint associated with this waste is substantial. Small stakeholder farmers still feed till today 70% of world's population, yet often struggle to earn a sustainable income. Empowering these farmers is not just a moral obligation, but a strategic necessity for a more equitable, sustainable, and resilient food system. As their practices often embody sustainability, focusing on regenerative methods and minimal agrochemical use. This raises the issue of sustainability and the tough choice stakeholders face. Should we adopt sustainable practices and risk lower productivity and not meet the growing demand? or keep using current methods that significantly contribute to the greenhouse gas emission by 10 to 12% and the erosion of our resources. I look forward to discuss this with the panel shortly, but first we need to discuss the resilience. Resilience is essential for any food system to deliver the desired outcome, even under stress. Our strategy for building it must include developing resilient policies that emphasize local production and reduce dependency on imports while maintaining economic efficiency, strengthening the resilience of supply chains and environmental sustainability, leveraging technology to enhance the productivity and efficiency of food production and distribution. Today, we dive into the challenge surrounding food security, recognizing its pivotal role in ensuring access to safe, nutritious food for everyone. As we approach this discussion through the lens of limited resources, nutrition, technology, and geopolitics. I'm excited to welcome the group of industry specialists to explore some innovative solutions and possible answers. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Antoine, we meet again. Mr. Antoine Kelly is the commercial director of Valley, one of the biggest companies that produce or manufacture the pivots. So whenever you're flying over the plane in the Middle East and you see these green circles from your airplane, that will be 50% of the time or more. Yeah, 50% of the time it will be a project supplied by Valley. Mr. Peter is the founder of E2Go. I'll leave him to discuss more about his technology in a bit. But first, I would like to start with the first section of addressing the food security, which is limited resources. So we are faced by a growing population, growing demand on food, and at the same time, we're faced by diminishing resources. Less water, less arable land, and increasing prices for fertilizer are all affecting the production of agriculture. Starting with you, Antoine. How does Valley address the rising concern of water shortage, and how are you practically handling it?
Yes, thank you, Hassan. So that's a great question. Actually, in our industry, water is very important. If there's no water, there's no food.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So in a lot of parts of the Middle East and Africa, irrigation is a must. If you don't have irrigation, you don't have a crop.
True.
In a lot of other parts of the world, irrigation is also important, and it's more of a timing issue. You can have rain,
True.
but if it's not at the right moment, it's not usable by the crop. So we can see, for example, last few days we had a lot of rain in Dubai, and then for the next 6 months maybe we won't have rain.
Yep.
So the crops, they cannot use water that came in the last few days, and the soil will not be able to stock it for the next 6 months. So irrigation is then a solution to correct that and make sure that there's enough water for the crop all day long, and it's like an insurance policy to make sure we have enough food production. So now governments and farmers, they depend on this type of technology, they depend on irrigation to produce enough food. That's how important irrigation is. So today, 20% of the cultivated land is irrigated, and that produces 40% of the crop in the world. And on that 20% that is irrigated, 85% is using traditional irrigation methods, such as flood irrigation. So basically, we are flooding all the field with water. And so that's not a very sustainable way to use our water. And that's why having technology like center pivot, but also drip irrigation, can reduce the use of water. We estimate by more or less 50%. So now if we look at the USA, which is an agriculture powerhouse, we see that in the last 3 decades, the irrigated land have increased by 10%, and at the same time, the water consumption have decreased by 20%. And this is because farmers have chosen to move away from traditional flood irrigation to mainly center pivot and a little bit of drip irrigation as well. So now when we change and when we use that technology, that was developed actually in the US 80 years ago. We're saving water. So with the same amount of water, we can produce double quantity of crop because we can irrigate double the size.
Yeah.
Or we can use half less water for the same food production.
Hello, Rana. No worries. Thank you for making it.
It's a pleasure to meet all of you.
Hi, I'm Pete.
How are you?
Lovely to meet you. Brilliant.
Perfect. Rana, I'm good. I know you had a very
I did.
an interesting flight coming here. So we'll just dive deep into it. We were talking about the diminishing limited resources that are affecting and being a key constraint in our food systems. Coming up to you, water being one of the most limited resources, how does SkyDrop contribute to addressing this shortage?
Absolutely. Thanks so much again for having me here. So for SkyDrops, really, I would say the two challenges to really go after is just the water scarcity, and then obviously the waste management. For the water scarcity portion is that we really want to be able to be looked at with our technology and the future technology that we're conducting research and development for, to be looked at as a secondary water source. And this is something that's really at the heart and core of what we do at SkyDrops. So currently we have a full water plant, atmospheric water generation plant, that is set up in Qatar, in the Qatar Free Zone area. And basically what we really aim to do is that to bring this capability to the Middle Eastern region, because what's really lacking in a lot of the MENA region is that secondary source.
Yeah.
And I would say the main issue is that with the secondary sources, a lot of times it really gets compared to a lot of traditional water sources. And I always kind of push back about that in the sense that you wouldn't sit there and compare, let's say, solar power capability to a traditional power generation plant. So in the same sense of an atmospheric water generators, in the sense of how much can they produce, they shouldn't really be discounted just for the fact that it can't produce as much of a desalination plant. And of course, with the major differences being that a desalination plant doesn't actually produce water, they just process water, where atmospheric water generation actually can produce water from thin air. So this capability, the idea that it's more sustainable, you could literally drop it anywhere in which there has to be a certain amount of humidity without really piping, drilling, and all of those typical traditional requirements in order to get water where it's really scarce.
Yeah. I've first come across this technology, I remember somewhere around 2000, 2001. But back then, it wasn't just economically feasible. How does the economics work now?
Yeah, absolutely. Atmospheric water generation, just the research and development has come such a long way. Primarily in the past decade, I could definitely tell you here just internally to SkyDrops, just within the last 6 months of operation in Qatar, we've actually been able to reduce our energy use per kilowatt by 50%, almost actually 60%,
Nice.
just internally, and to be able to produce more water just by the ongoing research and development that we're doing, and with the partnership that we have also with Qatar University on 9 separate research projects, and one of them being increasing water productions for atmospheric water generators. And really, as we look forward, we really try to aim to do two things: lower the energy consumption and increase the overall production of water, and ensuring that we are producing the highest quality water, which is one of the benefits to atmospheric water generators, in the sense that your typical water, whether it comes from the ocean or whether it comes from the ground, there's metals and such that get into the water that you just don't find in the air.
Yeah.
So when we say ultra pure water, it's not in the sense that it's a marketing gimmick. It's really more of a scientific adjective that we use, because it's kind of untouched, if you will.
Sure. Perfect. So Peter, I know you could come around the subject in a different manner. You just went ahead and created your own resources. Can you tell us more about your
Sure.
approach
do
to
you,
it?
Do you mind if I stand up?
No. Go ahead.
To give you a bit of my background, I was a BBC television news cameraman, and my job was to jump on a plane, fly into Nairobi, get on an even smaller plane, land in Mogadishu, and then go into Beledweyne, into the middle of nowhere, and film desperate people starving. Now that's quite shocking, because a human being needs 4 things to stay alive. They need oxygen,
Yep.
they need water, they need food, and they need sleep. If you get those 4 right, then they're going to be alive. But it's not going to solve their problem. One of the biggest problems that I noticed as a cameraman traveling around the world was food supplies were just wrong. You'd see a Hercules flying over South Sudan, chucking 25 kilogram bags of maize out the back. If it didn't land on your head and kill you, you were lucky. But if you managed to get it, you had to go and cut down a tree, make a fire, find some water, cook it, eat it. You'd have all this carbohydrates. You'd have a spike. You'd go to bed full and you'd wake up hungry. So when I sold my media company, I thought, well, how could I actually make an impact? How could I make a difference? And I thought, well, food, if somebody is scared and cold and wet and displaced, if they're full, they're immediately going to feel 50% better. So I looked at the kind of food that I would like to introduce, and it had to be plant-based, it had to be vegetarian, it had to be high in protein, and I came across something called spirulina that's a microalgae. And this spirulina is like a superfood. It's like protein on steroids, and it grows very, very easily. You can grow it locally, and you can produce it locally and make this amazing food bar. So it's not a promo for my company, but I just want you to see what the impact it makes. 10,000 of these can be dropped out of the back of a plane on a pallet, and then within minutes, people can be fed nutritiously and effectively. And for me, the most important thing was basically having sustainability that was using renewable energy, carbon reduction, food security. And I was very lucky, and I won't go on too long, to be invited to go to Rome to have dinner with the Director General of the World Food Programme. Her name is Ambassador Cindy McCain. And we sat in Rome. In fact, Belmont was there, your former boss was at the same dinner, and she said, what are we going to do? There are 850 million people going to bed every night starving, or at least hungry. We need an innovative new way of feeding more people with less money, with new technology, and we just got a huge world problem. So how do we solve that? And I said, well, I've got a food bar. And she said, what? And I said, well, an Australian friend of mine said, what are you going to call this thing? I said, I got no idea. She said, just call it food, mate. So you can't call it food. She said, well, it's no bullshit. It's just food, right? So we call it E2G food, which is eat to give and eat to grow. So I told Ambassador McCain about this product, and she said, you know what, that actually makes a lot of sense, because we have to grow locally. We have to use water more resourcefully and recyclable wherever we can. We need to use plant-based protein, and we should try and make an impact. So for the last year, we've been doing that, and we now have sent food bars to Ukraine, to Turkey, to Sudan. We're getting ready to send a whole 40-foot container to Gaza, and this is making an impact using food. So that's a bit of my background, and I'm passionate about it and could talk all day, so I'll sit down now.
Amazing. So prior to Rana joining us, we're saying that building resilience in food security and water security comes from taking care of limited resources. And second element is more adoption of technology. So technology has been labeled as a salvation of many industries. Despite its slow adaptation in agriculture, it poses a lifeline through its various vectors. Rana, how can we benefit from emerging technologies to create an alternative sustainable water source?
In reference to the future, really, when it comes to water, especially if you kind of look around right now at current events, I think that the future of water is in the air, in the sense that air is a little bit uncontrollable and no one can really put their hands on it.
Till now.
For now. But in the sense that with basically the capability and the untapped resource of the air, with atmospheric water generators or any other technology that's going to come out in the future, I think that really the way forward is for it to, really the future of it is, of course, accessibility. As we've talked about before, sustainability comes at a price. No matter what kind of technology you're in, it comes at a price. It's more expensive to make things that are sustainable. So I would say that the future of it becomes more accessible to the average person to be able to access alternative water. And then the second part really is just the continued development, like some of the things that we're doing at Skydrops currently right now to make these atmospheric water generators as self-sustaining as possible, in the sense that I would say the future of Skydrops, we're making generators that are completely wrapped around with solar power. We're working with Qatar University in the sense of looking at them for hydropower as water is generated and obviously creates an energy. So in the sense that these machines could basically be operated on their own without seeking out an external power source. So I think and this is all part of really the accessibility of the idea that it's going to be more affordable, it's going to be more accessible, and it's really going to be less and utilize a lot less energy than we expect. And I think also for the future is the quality of the water is going to just get better. I think I was just recently reading some sources about this new technology that's coming out that's really focused on ensuring microplastics are removed from water. And this is becoming a really huge concern. And there's new technology that's coming out that you're actually able to put some droplets in water and remove all microplastics within it. So I know this is something Skydrops is really focused on, in the sense that we really want to stay away from plastics with everything that we do inside of our water company. But I think that's really the future is that people are realizing more and more of what they're putting in their bodies, and that they want a better quality water for themselves and their families.
Excellent, amazing. Antoine, I know Valley invests a lot in technology. How do you utilize tech to increase the efficiency of the operations of your farmers or your end users?
Yes, so indeed we're investing a lot in technology. In the last 10 years, we've acquired many companies to remotely control our machines. And the last acquisition we made was 2 or 3 years ago on a technology on computer vision, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So that was a $300 million investment on a startup to put all those devices that they've developed on our machines. Because what we have as Valmont, we have machines on approximately 12 million hectares in the world. So we have 250,000 machines that are every day turning around the field and seeing what's happening.
I have many of them, so I know.
Yeah, you know that. So it's like a robot that we have on many fields. So 250,000 robots. Now, 35% of them are connected now.
Nice.
So now if we add cameras, if we add sensors, then we can understand what's going on in the field, how the soil is reacting, how the crop is looking like, and then we can tell the machine to correct what they're seeing. Okay, put a little bit more water here, put a little bit more fertilizer here, put a little bit more chemical here. So instead of putting chemical in all the field, or putting water in all the field, then we can correct it and put what is necessary at the place it is necessary. This way, we save input. You mentioned before that the cost of input is rising. So there's a lot of inflation for the farmers on a lot of their inputs, on fertilizers, on chemicals, on seeds. This way, they become more efficient, they become more precise. So for their pocket, it's better. And for the environment, it's better as well.
Amazing, amazing. So Peter, technology is not just gizmos and gadgets. Technology is also research, science, and investing more into unforeseen aspects of our life. How did E2Go leverage that into their product?
So I think the first thing is you can't just hand something out all the time because it's not sustainable. You can't just feed. You need to teach people to fish in order to feed themselves and grow. So a big part of our business is the localization of teaching people how to grow spirulina, microalgae. And it's actually extraordinarily easy. You can take a hostile environment, say the northern part of Kenya near the Somalia border, where there's like no agriculture whatsoever. You put in 2 long 75-meter raceway pools that are about 6 meters wide, 2 meters deep. It has a big tunnel over it. As long as there's sunshine, water, and the spirulina it grows so rapidly. In fact, you harvest every 4 days, and it's a cash crop. So we can feed around 500 people every day 5 grams of spirulina. And that 5 grams of spirulina is in the form of a green powder and doesn't taste very nice on its own. So you put it into the sukuma wiki or the maize meal or whatever that they eat, the local food, or they sell it back to us as a company. We then take that and we basically make a food bar, and then that gets sent to other parts of the world. So we're a company that teaches, trains women, kids, connects us to education, and we teach people to grow locally. So that technology is new. It's very pioneering, and it focuses on renewable energy, carbon reduction, and food security. And we've got our first one in Zimbabwe right now that was given, a donation was given to us through an American church, and that's been built now, right now. And we're looking to have companies work with us on a global basis to grow local, support local, feed local, and act local on a big impact. And the technology is what allows it to happen and make it happen. So we've also chosen Dubai as our headquarters. We're a Dubai company, or a Ras Al Khaimah company, because of the logistics. We can send stuff from Dubai anywhere in the world.
Yep.
The business welcomingness of UAE is phenomenal. It was an extremely easy process setting up a company. You've been invited to be a resident, and the support has been incredible. And, being invited by Income to come and talk here today is a good example of that, basically. So it's a great place to be in. We can make a huge impact, and that's our ambition, is to make an impact and help people in a positive way. But at the same time, we're a company for profit. We're not just an NGO.
Absolutely.
We feel doing well allows you to do good for longer.
Amazing. With food becoming increasingly weaponized, geopolitics, as we probably heard from our colleague earlier on, poses the main risk that causes one of the critical failing elements of our food systems. Rana, I cannot but draw on your previous experiences. So what's your opinion? How should countries address the risk of geopolitics in their food systems?
I think the main thing for countries is that trying to reach water independence as a whole is extremely important, and it's something that we really strive for at Skydrops, is to help countries reach water independence, especially for the MENA regions where they're really lacking in alternative water sources. I think that, especially with my background, you're seeing more and more that water is being weaponized. In fact, I think sometimes it's probably more effective than regular weapons, unfortunately. And I think that really the way forward is figuring out a water source that is a little bit more difficult for other people or other nations to be able to turn off, if you will. And we're seeing these water being weaponized, from Europe to Asia to the Middle East. And I think that the future of that is extremely important. I heard the previous Minister of Environment in Qatar say that and I'm sure he's not the only one who's been saying this, but that future wars will not be fought over oil, that they're really going to be fought over water. And I really believe that that's true.
It's already happening. Look at Syria, Turkey,
Correct.
Sudan.
Yep.
Correct. I really believe that's true. And I think that really harnessing technology and looking forward and ensuring that you have that technology in place and make sure it's accessible to countries that wouldn't typically have the technology in those locations is just so important, and really comes down to sustainable financing as well for these types of countries. And it's specifically from the global perspective with the United Nations, of being able to bring these to the forefront of the countries that are really needing this requirement, and being able to ensure that the infrastructure is set in such a way that it's not easy for someone to access it. Where the ground and the ocean, all of these things could be easily cut off. Where the air it's a little bit tougher. It's a little bit tougher.
True. Unfortunately, our time does not allow to go over all the aspects, but you mentioned finance, and I would like to say that one of the biggest pillars that affect the global food security is access to finance. So farmers not having access to finance is becoming a detrimental element in our food posture, and this is becoming a phenomenon everywhere. If you look at the UAE, for example, despite this very good scoring that we had as a country on the Global Food Security Index, one of the negative points that we had was the non-availability of access to farmers. So you're absolutely right. I think the industry cannot grow without, any industry cannot grow with access to finance. And in the case of food production, agriculture, finance becomes very tricky because you're going against so many factors that you cannot control. Antoine, with all the changes, not only geopolitics, but also the climate change that's happening, I see that your market is shifting. So first of all, you were in arid areas. Now I see you moving north as we speak. I know that you're having projects now in Romania, in Serbia, areas that never used to irrigate before. How is Valley addressing this, and what's the impact of that on other areas in the world where they used to be your regular clients? How do you?
Yes.
It's good for you. I know it's good for sales, but how do you handle that for people over here who are noticing the orders getting delayed and prices getting higher by the year?
Yeah. So I see some complaints from my customers
Yeah.
here. No, actually, we are even installing machines in Denmark and Sweden now.
Exactly.
So it goes up. So for now, we see it's not a massive market yet.
Yeah.
It will become. So we still see, especially in the Middle East and Africa, we still see the wheat importers like Egypt, Algeria as being one of the biggest customers for us. So two reasons for that. So number one, COVID and the supply chain shock, and number two, the war in Ukraine and Russia being the main wheat producer and exporter to Egypt and Algeria. And now Iraq as well wants to produce more wheat. So we're seeing huge volume going to those regions, and slowly to other regions, more to the north, more to Europe as well. And so what we're doing is that we're just expanding our factories. So here, to give you an idea, in the UAE, so we have one of the biggest Valmont manufacturing site in Jebel Ali. Before COVID, we had 100 employees. Now we have close to 400.
Wow.
We have doubled the footprint of our site in Jebel Ali. We tripled our capacity. And so this is how we do. We did the same. We had to do the same in Brazil as well. We had to do the same in the US. So a lot of demand, yes, for products.
So we should hold on to these stocks despite the turbulence in the last few months. Okay. Peter, Itigo, if I might say, is a brainchild of conflicts from your travels and whatever you came across. What are your thoughts on putting preemptive measures that affect that the geopolitics have on food security?
Food security definitely is a weapon, and I'm going to be very blunt. We're seeing it happening in Gaza right now.
True.
And that really, really disturbs me. And what happened to the World Food Kitchen and the guys who are in there feeding millions of people really, really affects all of us in this room. So I think in order for us to turn food security and risk out of geopolitics, we need to make it a non-issue. We have to stop people migrating from arid parts of Africa, risking their lives walking across deserts, getting in boats and trying to land up in Europe. And a lot of them are doing it because they're hungry.
Yeah.
They just don't have, if it's not hunger, it's financial insecurity, and they just don't have the money. So if we can create income-earning, localized feeding opportunities that allow people to feed themselves and earn money and have a circular system, then there's a better chance people are going to stay where they are, because they want to be in their own culture, they want to be in their own country, they don't want to leave necessarily, but they have to sometimes. So if we go to the World Bank or the IMF and we say, let's take $50 million and put 2,000 algae farms into an arid part of any country, that's going to feed 2.5 million people, not once, but every day. And it's not a big investment, it's totally recyclable, and it's just an education shift, and it's a technology play. And it's bankable, because if you get an off-take agreement from, say, the World Food Programme or UNICEF or somebody else, it means they're going to buy the product from the local farmers.
Yeah.
So there's a cash crop. And people want to work. They don't want to just be given food and money for nothing. They want to earn their keep. So what we have to do as an industry, we have to look at, maybe not my technology, but look at ways of getting people to feed local, eat local, and stay local.
Absolutely.
That's the only thing that's going to solve this geopolitics of food insecurity that becomes a weapon. And I love your idea of the water. People can just take water out of the air. That's just phenomenal.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I need to add on to what you just said, and also comment on some of the efforts that are being done by the UAE government in Africa. So personally, also worked with Valley on this. We've created what we call as a modular farm that the UAE is contributing to a lot of the impoverished communities or in developing nations, whereby we are helping the subsistence of the farmers in providing them with tools to grow their own food and to increase their subsistence and also is catered to their requirements in terms of sustainability. We all know that they don't have access to power, so there comes sustainable solutions, solar power. We gave them with the cold chain. Technology helped us also connect these devices so that we can give them remote support because they don't all have access to technical support. So this is one of the efforts that the UAE government, one of many that the UAE government is supporting in Africa, and it falls in line with what Rana said in the standalone unit coming from the air, or whether the algae farms can do that. I thank you all for joining us here. I know we didn't cover it all, but we touched on some of the critical aspects of it, and I hope that the decision makers, whoever joined us here today, could leverage on it to come up with something that's more tangible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to the very insightful panelists. A big round of applause for them.